welcome to the July 8th, 2025 Community Reinvestment Agency Board meeting. I'm Councilmember Dan Dugan. I'll be chairing the meeting today. Our meetings are public, and you're welcome to join us in person on Zoom or by watching the City Council agenda page, YouTube or SLC TV. We hope you continue to join us in whichever manner you feel most comfortable. As usual, we begin our meeting with comments to the board. And I'd like to remind you that written comments may be submitted to the CRA office via mail to P.O. Box 145476, Salt Lake City, Utah 84114, or emailing us at council.comments@slc.gov. We're calling our 24-hour line, 801-535-7654. Again, thank you for joining us today. And before we start, I wanted to remind everyone about our rules of decorum, which are in place to ensure that our meetings move along well and help everyone feel comfortable sharing their comments. A copy of the full rules of decorum are available. If you'd like to make a general comment today, we are accepting comments in person, online, or Zoom. On Zoom, Scott Corpney from our staff will moderate our Zoom and will message you with any questions about your registration. If you do need to speak with our staff, please select Scott from the list of participants. If you need to, you can also raise your hand in Zoom to indicate that you need something from the host. Staffing is handling many tasks, so please limit messages to technical issues and minimal information updates. Taylor Hill on our staff will be calling those who wish to comment based on the order we receive the names. If you are in Zoom, please unmute your mic when Taylor calls your name. And we will now open our general comments. Taylor, our first comment.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We have about 8 people registered to speak. The first will be Oscar Arvizu, followed by Jason Morrow, and then Kai Barrera. Oscar, you may now unmute.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Hello, my name is Oscar Arvizu. I lived in Salt Lake City for over 20 years now, and I was fortunate to win the residential category of the Ballpark Next design competition for my Sky Garden concept. So I've spent a considerable time thinking about this project's amazing potential. I truly appreciate many aspects of the current plan: affordable home ownership, senior housing, daylighting creeks, partnering with local businesses, preserving part of the ballpark, and adding a library. These are all great ideas. But I'd like to offer a few more thoughts. First, break away from the generic, rigid design. Right now, the plan relies heavily on block-shaped buildings laid out in a rigid grid, essentially a city grid inside a city grid. Research in urban design and neuroscience shows organic, varied, or curved forms reduce stress and encourage walking and gathering. Let's add more green buffers and courtyards. I understand you want to get more bang for your buck, but please think outside the box. Second, keep the city firmly in control. Because this is city-owned land, how will home ownership and business parcels work? Will they be sold or leased to private developers? How will Salt Lake ensure architectural quality, affordability, and community needs long-term? Too often, cities defer to developers, sacrificing standards. This is a chance for Salt Lake to lead and hold them accountable. Third, ensure transparency and trust. Given that some officials have ties to developers, it's crucial if anyone in government making decisions on this project does not benefit financially. Public trust depends on avoiding any conflicts of interest. This site is a rare blank canvas. Done right, it could be a national model for turning city land into something affordable, green, and truly inspiring. Please keep developers from driving the vision by default. This is Salt Lake City's chance to set people-focused standards for decades ahead.
Next will be Kai Barrera, followed by Cindy Cromer, and then Jeff Sandstrom. Kai, you may now unmute.
Hi, my name is Kai Barrera. I live in Salt Lake City, and I work in Ballpark, just right next to where this plan is taking place. And I really like many aspects of the plan, but I also have worries about the affordability of the housing. In my current apartment complex, there are 2 other people that I know of that are struggling to make rent, who we are pulling together resources for food to help ease the burden. And one of the things that we often see in our communities in Salt Lake City is expensive apartments that are unattainable to us. I think there is mention of below market rate housing in the plan, which I do like, but it doesn't specify how many units will be allocated towards that. I think this is a huge concern for me because whenever these plans do seem to actually be built, many of the houses are not below market rate. Most of them are market rate or above. And I believe that current market rate is not affordable for me and many other people like me. I also have concerns about how this construction will affect businesses in the area. What I would hate to see for this plan that has so much potential is for it to destroy local businesses as we see in the Sugar House area. There are dozens of businesses that have either disappeared or are at risk of disappearing that have been supported by local communities for years, if not decades, that are just struggling to make ends meet because of the endless construction in the area. And I know there are similar uh, locally beloved businesses in the ballpark area, such as Lee Field Thrift Store, Sage Market, and the business that I work at as well.
And next will be Cindy Cromer, followed by Jeff Sandstrom, and then Brittany Knudsen. Cindy is here in person.
This story isn't written down anywhere. When the bees were coming to Salt Lake City, I was on the Planning Commission. It was a big deal. Corradini was all in. The bleachers were unbelievably shabby, and we had to figure out where a new ballpark was going to go. There were 3 or 4 options, I've forgotten. It was so important that the planning director wrote the staff report. It was actually a direct report. And when I complimented on Bill Wright on the quality of his analysis and writing, he said to me, I almost lost my job over that. It was a big deal back then. So here we are, all these years later, and I have a few things from looking at the information in the media and a cursory look at the presentation today. I don't see anything about what's going to happen to the art glass, the etched glass that was done by local artists. Willie Littig was one of them. He has his studio in District 4. The view from the stands will be of a parking structure. Please. This is one of the most beautiful stadiums, ballparks in the world, with its view of the Wasatch Front. How dare you place a parking structure in front of the people watching concerts? This is just horrid. There is nothing more beautiful than looking at Mount Olympus. Nothing. And the focus on the perimeter and putting the business of parking in the center of the block is just horrid given this view. It is the most important thing to protect besides the open space. And then finally, if you don't make some arrangements about what happens to the grassy area, it will become yet another de facto off-leash dog park. So please think ahead. We don't need loose dogs running around in that space. Thank you.
And next will be Jeff Sandstrom, followed by Brittany Knudsen, and then Fraser Nelson. Jeff is here in person.
My name's Jeff Sandstrom. I'm a homeowner in the ballpark and longtime board member of the Ballpark Community Council. Throughout the process of public input for revisioning the ballpark and Central 9th Community Council's Ballpark Action Team, the RDA and the City Planning and Zoning Departments have collected a large amount of input from the residents and businesses regarding the adaptive reuse of the ballpark. I feel like the ballpark next plan has missed the community's vision in some important areas. One, the proposed multifamily housing feels like it's overwhelming the entire project, particularly surrounding the stadium. The focal point, as I understood, was supposed to be the large central green space for community activities, markets, concerts, events, and additional open space. Two, incorporating the existing ballpark's entrance as a historic gateway was also recommended. I would suggest that the entire west portion of the stadium be maintained. 3, the lack of additional open green space and tree canopy areas is disappointing, particularly on the ballpark side. 4, a hotel and high-rise housing seems to have taken the place of a proposed community and cultural center along 13th South, which does not contribute to the year-round community engagement mission of the project. This space has been dedicated as a public land for more than 100 years. I'm asking you to refocus this project on community open space, community enjoyment, entertainment, engagement as the cornerstone of this development. Thank you.
Next will be Brittany Knudsen, followed by Fraser Nelson and Amy Hopkins. Brittany's here in person.
Hi, I'm here to speak about the Rio Grande District and the Rio Grande Plan, which I'm sure you've heard a lot about, but I wanted to say how much I love the renderings that I've seen, but that I believe that the Rio Grande District can't reach its potential without the Rio Grande Plan. There is no modern building that can be built that can capture, that is as capable of capturing the hearts and the minds of Utahns as the Rio Grande Depot. It's a part of Utah's history, and it's iconic. It's uniquely Utahn. Disregarding it in the plans is ignoring the legacy that we've inherited. Without the Rio Grande Plan, this development will be constantly restricted by rail infrastructure or by the depot itself. It will exist beautifully on its own, but it will be unable to lift the rest of the city. The economic success of the Rio Grande Plan in conjunction with this redevelopment is not in question. In Denver's similar project, it delivered above and beyond projections, paying off its loans in half the time. The Utah State did a study that said the same can happen here. It's for that reason I'm asking you to include the Rio Grande Plan in your development plans for this district. The past leaders of Salt Lake knew the value of the depot. That's why they only agreed to Central Station's current location on condition that it would be temporary and that service would return to the depot. The goal was always to return service, and this project that you began here and planned and outlined beautifully complements that dream perfectly. By valuing our history and blending the old with the new, we have the chance to stand on shoulders of giants and of the giants who came before us and reach even farther. Thank you.
And next will be Fraser Nelson, followed by Amy Hawkins, and then Erica Carlson. Fraser is here in person.
Good afternoon. I'm Fraser Nelson, a member of the Ballpark Action Team and a resident of the Ballpark neighborhood. We really agree with a lot of what Jeff Sandstrom brought up, and our colleagues at the Community Council share their concerns. We're generally encouraged by the existence of this plan, but we are deeply concerned and skeptical about the pace of progress. I'd like to add that to Jeff's concerns. Without defined milestones, it's difficult for residents, for people who own property in the area, to hold the city accountable. And given the pace that has occurred for other developments in the region, we're concerned that ours will continue to fall behind. We're encouraged by the emphasis on housing diversity and affordability, but we are concerned equally that, like Jeff, that so much of the focus is on housing that doesn't necessarily include home ownership. Only 16% of Ballpark residents own their homes, compared to 66% in the metro area, and home ownership is a key component. Given that the city owns this land, we would hope that they would creatively look at ways to increase home ownership. We share concerns about the heights of some of the buildings. We share concerns about the placement of the parking lots. We're concerned about 13th South not having sufficient traffic calming to allow people to walk carefully, safely between the two main points of connectivity. And although it's really great that there are additional resources like the library that came in, you did drop the community center and rec center, which were high priorities for residents. And we think that the placement of the library might limit the availability of bar licenses, and so therefore limit the types of businesses that could be in the area. We also are concerned about the lack of tie to the history of the neighborhood and the Ballpark in particular.
Next will be Amy Hawkins, followed by Erica Carlson. Amy is here in person.
Hello, my name is Amy. I've served as the chair of the Ballpark Community Council, and I've also been a resident of the Ballpark community for 11 years. The city's 2019 Parks and Public Land Needs Assessment showed that the central community, including Ballpark, has the lowest park service in the city, just 2.8 acres per 1,000 people, and no access to natural lands. At the same time, it's where most of the city's growth was and is expected. Looking at today's draft plan with the park promenade, the neighborhood field, and the creek park, we're only getting 2.4 acres of planned green space, just 16% of the site. It appears less than what we already even have at Smith's Ballpark, which includes the baseball field, the berm seating, and a big shady green picnic area along Main Street. This plan doesn't add needed green space in a neighborhood that's already been upzoned for more density and more residents. Our health is tied to our environment. Utah has warmed twice as fast as the global average over the past 50 years, and that heat doesn't affect all communities equally. In 2023, local teacher Rob Wilson worked with NOAA to create the SLC Heat Watch report. It confirmed that Ballpark is a major heat island. We stay hotter, especially at night. We need to get cooler. Last month, we had a national conversation where Senator Mike Lee suggested that we should sell off our public lands to create needed housing opportunities. And Utahns from across the political spectrum were deeply upset about this possibility. So before selling this public land and giving up a rare chance to expand green space, ask, how hot will Ballpark be in 50 years, 100 years? Consider running some projections to see, what if?
Time. And next will be Erica Carlson, who's here in person.
Hi everyone, my name is Erica Carlson and I'm a resident of the Ballpark neighborhood. I first want to begin by saying thank you to the CRA for leading a process and producing a plan that largely reflects many community priorities. There was one piece missing in the plan though, that was not explicitly called out, and I would invite the council to really look further into. And this part is crucial. It's that this land is publicly owned and that it remains publicly owned for future generations of Salt Lakers. This is not a parcel of land that can be sold off to private developers. Public ownership really offers a rare opportunity for us to push for the many things that we wanted, whether home ownership through community land trusts, affordable rent options for local businesses in the neighborhood, or wealth building opportunities. We've already seen and felt in the Ballpark neighborhood and felt the cost of this short-term thinking. Current Ballpark is only 30 years old. And that Ballpark failed to deliver the economic benefits the neighborhood was promised. We can't afford to repeat that mistake. This plan is about more than land use, it's about creating generational equity. It's about ensuring public assets are stewarded in service of the public good so that future Salt Lakers inherit not just beautiful buildings, but that land has been intentionally preserved for generations. As you finalize this plan, I hope that you commit to keeping all of this land, all of it, for public benefit and public use for generations to come. Lastly, I want to mention that this plan cost almost $1 million to produce over the course of 2.5 years. It is a well thought out and intentional plan forward. And after 2.5 years, the time to act is now. And so I encourage this council, I encourage the CRA to work with both urgency and swiftness and diligence in moving forward this plan and show that government can deliver for people with public benefit at the heart of it all. Thank you so much.
That was the final registered commenter.
Thank you, Taylor, and thank you for everybody who made comments. You made comments to the right audience because they're all sitting right in front of you and taking copious notes and nodding their heads and writing down things. So I appreciate everyone's comments. That was the general comments to the board. And our next item is public hearing, which is basically what you just did for the ballpark. So in essence, we took those two. So we have no other further public hearing at this point. So we'll move on to the first item on the agenda. And guess what that is? Informational Ballpark Next Community Design Plan. We have Lauren Parisi, McKenna Holly. There she is. Hello.
Thanks so much. So we'll get right into it. Today we have Mark Asnes, Senior Associate from design firm Perkins & Will, who is the lead project manager on the Ballpark Next Community Design Plan, and he will be reviewing the design plan for you all today.
Thanks, Lauren. Hello, board members. Great to be back. As Lauren mentioned, my name is Mark Asnes. I'm with the design firm Perkins & Will. I was the project manager for the consultant team. I'm so excited to be here to provide you with an update on the Ballpark Next Community Design Plan public draft. If you go to the next slide, please. So on July 1st, we released the public draft. It is organized into 6 graphically rich, hopefully easily digestible chapters that outline the vision, outlines the process, delivers design frameworks for both horizontal and vertical development, champions the transformation of the ballpark into a sports and entertainment destination, helps provide visualizations of the community experience and what this site can be like in the future, and then outlines a high-level development roadmap. Next slide, please. And when the plan was released, it got a lot of great coverage. One of the graphics that was very prominently featured was the bird's eye axonometric view that you see on the screen here. And this really shows a potential full build out of the site. But how did we get here? So I'm gonna take a minute and I'm just gonna start from the very beginning of the process and walk you through how we got to this long-term vision that's featured in the community design plan. Next slide, please. So first and foremost, this is a plan that honors the voices of the ballpark neighborhood. This is absolutely paramount to the success of the plan. If you go to the next slide, please. We started by building on foundational documents, whether that was starting with the ballpark station area plan, moving into drawing inspiration from the Ballpark Next design competition. If you take a moment and look at the submissions from the competition and look at the final plan, you'll see a lot of those ideas have made it into our preferred scenario. It's really exciting, as well as really using the Ballpark Next vision statement and guiding principles as our North Star. We established that we were gonna really honor and follow this vision statement and guiding principles at the very onset, and we remained steadfast on seeing those guiding principles make its way into the final product. Next slide, please. And just as important as the final design, we crafted a design methodology. It was just as important to lay out the process. So as I mentioned, we started by honoring and acknowledging the community's guiding principles that were established in that previous planning effort. We filtered those guiding principles into the CDC social determinants of health, social and community context, economic stability, healthcare access and quality, neighborhood and built environment, and education access and quality, all incredibly important criteria for ensuring that there are positive health outcomes for all. We then, as part of our stakeholder engagement and our ideation sessions, we identified the key design and programmatic elements that were important to the community, and ultimately that made its way into the final framework. Next slide, please. So once we established our methodology, we did our initial community engagement. We then started on the task of developing 3 distinct design scenarios or test fits. Ultimately, we needed to understand what was going to be the fate of the ballpark structure. So scenario 1, what if we preserved the entire Smith Ballpark? Scenario 2, what about if it was a partial demolition, partial adaptive reuse? What could that look like? And scenario 3 was looking at a scenario of a complete removal of the structure. We presented this to our community stakeholders. We walked through both the pros and cons of each of these. We presented this to Mayor Mendenhall, the Ballpark Next Impact Fund, as well as presenting it to this board. And collectively, we came to the decision that we were going to move forward with scenario 2, a partial demolition and partial adaptive reuse. Next slide, please. So the plan has a lot of pretty pictures. And we need those type of pretty pictures and visualizations to get people excited and to make this as clear and accessible as possible. But we can't lose sight that this is an evidence-based plan. We put together a multidisciplinary team of urban planners, architects, structural, civil, transportation engineers, economists, community engagement specialists to make sure what ultimately made its way into the plan was grounded in fact and analysis. Next slide, please. So that spanned a lot of different studies, whether it was looking at the neighborhood context, zoning analysis, alcohol proximity considerations, a neighborhood public health assessment. Our civil and transportation engineers helped us understand what was the existing roadway and utility capacity within the site and how would the program impact that. We looked at 1300 South and how we could make that more pedestrian friendly. We did a study on a preliminary daylighting of the creeks and what that could look like, what were the engineering solutions, as well as putting forward a shared parking and transportation demand management strategy. From a structure standpoint, our structural engineers did an assessment of the ballpark structure. We presented this at an earlier board meeting. It's in good condition. And they also helped us understand where the expansion joints were within the structure, which ultimately helped us determine where was the appropriate place for demolition and where was the appropriate place for adaptive reuse. Our engineers also helped us provide a rough order of magnitude cost estimate for what that adaptive reuse could potentially cost. And then finally, from an economic standpoint, Victus Advisors helped us do a preliminary market scan looking at both local and national interest and appetite in an event venue at the ballpark. Next slide, please. So now we move into the design. So ultimately, this is a evidence-based design process that really honored the voices of the community, engaged the community to help bring new life to a city landmark. Next slide, please. We had 8 moves that really defined the larger urban design framework, and I'm going to cover all of these very briefly. So starting with people first streets, if you go to the next slide. I'm going to move through these fairly quickly. So here's an aerial view of the ballpark site today. Next slide. And then, like many development sites within Salt Lake City, in order to think about this as a people-first environment, we need to break up the blocks. We need to break up the super block. That big green arrow that you see here in this diagram, that is a park promenade that we're proposing, which is a primary tree-lined, wide pedestrian corridor that creates a neighborhood shortcut through the site. Our pink arrows are shared streets. Again, they are pedestrian priority, but they also provide the necessary access for emergency vehicles, private vehicles for parking and servicing, a lot of the things that are very necessary for a well-functioning development. And then these thin blue lines show pedestrian walkways that would actually be public and would bisect through the structure, the ballpark structure. And then we are proposing a improved intersection in the mid-block of the between West Temple and Main Street to help create a more seamless connection between the south block and the north block of the site. Next slide, please. And ultimately, the roadways, the park spaces are all blended together. We do need functional roadways, but what we really want to do is create a natural, beautiful, enduring, beloved space, a public realm that really welcomes the community in, where the lines between what is a potential roadway and what is a park space are really blurred. Safely and intentionally blurred, but there is this sense that this is really one cohesive space. Next slide, please. And in terms of open spaces, we have identified, or we are proposing 5 different types of park typologies. The first is the Creek Park, which is located on the northern block. This was actually a great example of evidence-based design. Our civil engineers told us that the box culvert underneath 13 South that contains the creeks that are flowing to the river, they're on the northern side of the road. So for us to actually propose a feasible partial daylighting of the creek to then go back into the culvert, it made most sense to have that park located on the northern parcel. And this is supposed to be a a place where a moment of respite, of really being immersed in ecology of nature, a quieter type of space. And I'll talk more about that in a minute. The second is the Festival Street on West Temple. This originates back to the station area plan, and we've held to that and have brought it back into this community design plan. Our neighborhood field, which is number 3, which is really the epicenter of community life on the southern block, which is really supposed to be a multi-purpose and year-round activated outdoor space. Our park promenade, which I just mentioned, which, yes, it is a pedestrian pathway, but is just as much a park space as it is a pedestrian promenade. There's a playground, there's a variety of different seating elements that are going to be situated over under groves of trees to really help create a place that's climatically comfortable. And then the last is the library court on the potential future library site at the corner of 1300 South and Main Street, which could be a natural extension of the library for outdoor education and library programming. Next slide, please. So now just zooming into the South Block, we just really want to emphasize that we put a lot of thought and there's a lot of detail into our landscape plan and our public realm plan. Just a couple things to note really quickly. One, this plan proposes to preserve the existing trees along West Temple, but where there is new vegetation, we want to utilize a native plant palette to rehabilitate habitat and really enhance shade cover. We want to memorialize home plate and install educational placards throughout the site to really help tell the story of the history of this site. We want to implement a signature paving system that prioritizes a pedestrian-first environment, which would integrate signature benches, exterior lights, planters, banners, something that could really be done as part of a collaborative effort with the larger community. Next slide, please. And here's just an illustrative rendering on the park promenade looking out onto the neighborhood field. You'll see the playground on the left. You'll see a youth soccer game happening on the field itself. And you'll see what is the desired type of tree cover and vegetation we'd like to see here. Next slide, please. And then this graphic is kind of, if the previous rendering was like a Sunday morning, this is really looking at the ways in which we can activate it on specific event days, whether it's a youth soccer tournament or a winter festival or an outdoor movie screening or a rock concert. Ultimately, this neighborhood field wants to be designed as flexible and multi-purpose for a wide range of different types of users at different times of the year. Next slide, please. And here's a rendering of the Festival Street on West Temple, a street that could be temporarily closed off so that it can provide opportunities for neighborhood events, whether it's a farmer's market. I'd also draw your attention to the renovated ballpark on the ground floor, that there would be local shops that would be along the ground floor of this adaptive reuse of the ballpark, really making West Temple a festival street that has activated ground floors. It becomes an extension of, it becomes a new retail street for the neighborhood. Next slide, please. Then moving into the Creek Park, as I mentioned, it's located on the northern part of the site as a result of where the location of the culvert is. This is about creating a different type of park environment, a place where people can feel more connected to nature, where we can celebrate the ecology of Salt Lake. And I really love this quote, the second bullet point. The act of restoration turns forgotten flows into a living feature, cooling the site, supporting ecosystems, and inviting people to gather around water. This helps support the Reimagined Nature plan that was put forward by Salt Lake City. This is something that is in support of the Seven Canyons Trust that's really looking to do these efforts across the city. And it could be a really amazing open space feature and amenity for the neighborhood. Next slide, please. And here's just a graphic of what that could look like. Again, this is just a cartoon, but it's supposed to elicit potentially what this could feel like. And again, it's about a natural type of landscape where maybe water is flowing on certain times of the year, and sometimes it's a dry creek bed. But it's really a place where people can feel connected to nature, I'd also note that we're putting forward a very wide sidewalk along 1300 South with a double alley of trees. This is supposed to be a place that feels low stress and comfortable and welcoming for all people. Next slide, please. So now moving into land use and urban form. Next slide. So our program proposes approximately 400 units of multifamily housing. And we define at this stage of the project, we're defining multifamily quite broadly. It could mean market rate, it can mean below market rate, it can mean rental, it can mean home ownership. The specifics of this will ultimately get determined in a future phase of work, but we do see this as being, in order to support the safety and the activation and the level of vibrancy we want to see on these open spaces, it's absolutely critical that we have people living here to help make sure that this environment feels welcoming and desirable. So putting forward a wide variety of different types of housing options and price points. We're also proposing approximately 60 units of senior housing that would be located above the potential site of the library. There are a lot of amazing case studies across the country of senior housing above a public library, a lot of amazing benefits and synergies between those two. We think that's a very appropriate co-location of program. Next slide, please. And then moving into the commercial components of this is not all about housing. There's civic, hospitality, and retail components to this plan as well. A hotel proposed at the corner of 1300 South and West Temple, really helping to solidify that intersection as a primary gateway into the site, and really thinking about this as both a retail and just active center, a really important intersection for the site itself. The green shows our adapted ballpark structure, which we're proposing as an entertainment venue, and I'll get into more detail on that in a minute. As I mentioned, a potential library site on the corner of 1300 South and Main Street. This is a potential site. We think this makes sense. I will say that there needs to be further discussions with the library as well as the fire department to understand their respective timelines and if this makes sense. But we ultimately, for this plan, think that this is a very viable option. And then the relocated fire station that is located further down Main Street. Today, Fire Station 8 is located at the corner of 1300 South and Main Street. With conversations from our Salt Lake City's fire chiefs, we determined that collectively that this was going to be a very appropriate place for a new fire station in the future. And then from a ground floor retail standpoint, we're concentrating that retail at that intersection of 1300 South and West Temple, with some of the retail extending into West Temple on the adaptive reuse of the ballpark. Next slide, please. And actually, as you look at this graphic at a different vantage point, you can see all that red on the ground floor is where we're really wanting to concentrate that ground floor retail. We want to be very intentional about that. From an urban form standpoint, three very key design drivers. One, concentrate the tallest allowable heights on 1300 South, and then gradually step down to cap heights so we preserve the views of the mountains, as well as create a responsible transition to the surrounding single-family neighborhood. Next slide, please. And just to drive that point home, here's a 2D height map. So what you'll see is, yes, we are proposing 200 feet as an allowable maximum height at the intersection of 1300 South and West Temple. Our next tier is 120 feet. Third tier is 85 feet, and then 65 on one corner in the northern block, and then capping at 45 feet. Yes, this development would be the tallest development in the neighborhood in the future. But what I want to draw your attention to is when you look at the larger rezoning of the ballpark neighborhood and you look at an MU8 zone, the allowable heights go up to 90 feet. For FBUN2, the allowable heights go up to 50. So when you look at this integrated into the future urban form of this neighborhood, yes, it's going to be tall, but it's going to be appropriately scaled with the adjacent parcels. Next slide, please. So now moving into the adaptive reuse of the ballpark. As I mentioned, our structural engineer helped us understand, A, the condition of the ballpark, and it's in good condition, and two, where the expansion joints are located within the ballpark itself, which ultimately helped us make the decision on where we chose to reuse the ballpark structure as well as demolition. And ultimately, we said we were going to preserve the southern wing, as you see in this diagram, as the place where we are going to preserve. And if you go to the next slide, it's not just about preserving the structure as it is today, it's really reimagining a landmark and infusing new life through a variety of different types of architectural interventions, whether it's a new roof that extends out onto West Temple, cross-laminated timber to help create greater warmth and a different type of architectural language, new entry portals, stripping the CMU, concrete masonry units, off of the ballpark today and replacing it with a new glass facade treatment. So there's really this sense of light and transparency that's really helping to welcome people on into the ballpark. And then, of course, rethinking the interiors of the site. Ground floor shops for local businesses, the opportunity for a restaurant or a bar on the top floor. Next slide, please. And just another way to look at it, with the ballpark structure and the adjacent field, we have estimated that there could be a combined capacity of approximately 9,000 spectators. That's 3,700 in the stands itself, and then an additional 5,500 as part of standing capacity within the field. So approximately 9,000 spectator event venue. And we do see this field and the ballpark itself as having an adaptable, flexible layout so that it can support a variety of different types of events. Next slide, please. And here's just a rendering looking from the corner of 1300 South and West Temple, entering into the site itself. You'll see this new, revitalized, adaptive reuse of the ballpark to the right. You'll see new ground floor retail and new development on the left, and this opportunity to really help frame the mountains as you enter into the heart of the development. Next slide, please. So now I'll pass it to Lauren to talk about a development roadmap for incremental change to really bring this vision toward implementation.
Thanks so much, Mark. Yes, so the community design plan does include a phasing strategy at the end of the document. We anticipate that this development will be built out in 4 phases. The first phase really focuses on what we believe will be the heart of this new neighborhood node, which is the entertainment venue, and additionally new housing. So by the end of the year, the CRA will put out an RFP for development of housing on the northwest corner of the site with a strong preference for sale product. At the same time, we'll be researching potential operators for the entertainment venue and working through those development details, as well as preparing for the partial demolition of the stadium. So next slide. You can see this graphic kind of highlights those first elements of phase 1. And I'd like to also highlight that the phasing strategy also contemplates kind of interim activation ideas. And so for this phase 1, we also plan on piloting different ideas for the activation of the festival street, and simultaneously looking at kind of tactical urbanist strategies or potentially paint where the Creek Park is slated to be located. So some of those kind of activation techniques will be happening alongside the development planning. Next slide. And then phase 2 here really completes the construction of the entertainment venue, looking at the neighborhood fields, as well as the multi-purpose, multifamily buildings on the northern half of the site, and the parking garage to accommodate those new uses. So that's phase 1 and 2 of our phasing strategy. With that, I believe it concludes the presentation, and we'd love to hear all the feedback you have. We do hope to kind of take the feedback from both the public and you all as the board, synthesize things, and bring the final plan back to you for your endorsement at a future meeting. Thanks.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Lauren. Questions? Board? Councilman Pedro?
Mr. Chair? Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, go ahead, Darren, and then Councilor Pedro, board member. Go ahead.
Okay, thanks. I just appreciate all the work that's gone into this and how well the CRA staff and Perkins and Will has done with incorporating the community and ourselves into the process. So I just wanted to say that first of all. I have a couple design questions and then a couple process questions. So I'll start with the design ones. I'm encouraged to see the Creek Park and that potential for that daylighting. I'm wondering if someone could speak to how realistic that was. I know we had riparian corridor concerns and some other things, but would love to hear a little bit more about what the challenges will be to actually daylighting the creek and how realistic that might be. And then on the allowable heights slide, it looked to me, and I'm not opposed to height at this site, but it doesn't look like the renderings match the allowable heights that are proposed. And I'm wondering, at some point we'll need to rezone this because I believe it's zoned public lands right now. As we do that, I'd love to see a rendering that actually shows it built out to the maximum height so that we can know whether or not we see that as the correct thing. I think the density that's shown on the axonometric or the 3D renderings looks comfortable and nice. I could see it accommodating more density and greater height, but I would love to be able to compare those side by side for the point at which we do those rezones. I can pause there.
Yeah, I mean, so it's a good point about the renderings. One thing to note is that when you look at the axon, that bird's eye view, there is one tower that does go up to 200 feet. It's actually in the middle portion of the area allocated for 200 feet in terms of allowable height. We actually stepped down the hotel to be deferential to the adaptive reuse of the ballpark and actually align it with the datum of the roof lines. And two, we thought it helped create a more kind of welcoming, entry into the site so that you would have a lower height and then it would gradually get higher toward the interior. The other thing was actually through some shadow analysis as part of the creek study, having that particular building lower there helped reduce shadows being cast onto the creek park. So that's a really good point. I think we wanted to keep a flexibility in terms of where that height could happen on the site, but ultimately the way in which we rendered it as part of this plan was thought through, to help create a better urban design result.
Thank you.
I can jump in regarding kind of the Creek Park question. We did have our engineering team, Kimley Horn, further analyze kind of a high-level feasibility of daylighting this creek. We had some questions about riparian corridor requirements, and through their further analysis, it's our understanding that those requirements might not apply to this type of waterway, and in terms of engineering and things, that it's definitely feasible that this creek could be daylit. So they did do that technical analysis at a very high level and looked at, again, the riparian corridor. We met with public utilities as well as Salt Lake County. So yes, we definitely looked at that a bit more and felt confident including it in the plan. There definitely will be more study to be done, but at a high level, we believe it's feasible.
Thank you, Lauren.
I appreciate that. I think, oh, sorry, Mr. Chair.
Go ahead, one more comment, because we're kind of over time here, but we have some more.
I appreciate that. I think that from the Ballpark Next design competition that happened, the daylighting of the creek for me was one of the light bulb moments, and I'm really glad to see that still in the plan right now. And I hope that we can move forward with at least keeping that possibility open. I know that we're going to have a lot of discussions about funding and how the RFPs will go out. I appreciate looking at the phasing plan, but I would love to be part of conversations about what we do, what the next steps are, and how we fund some of the public pieces of this. There's going to be some pretty big lifts with both the library, the fire department. So a lot of those things will have to be direct city or library funding, and other things. So, and I assume will require bonds, and then other things can be partnership with developers. The other thing I'd like to be part of the conversation and make sure that we're continuing is some of the comments that came up in terms of how we're ensuring homeownership and the mixture of housing. I'm wondering at what point, I don't need to take this question now, but at least maybe offline, when do we determine that? Is that as each individual RFP goes out, or do we set that as a priority now? I'd just love to have a further conversation about those things. I'll leave my comments there. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Board Member Petro.
Thank you. What is our intention in terms of land ownership? Is it our intention at any point, especially for the parcels we're RFPing, to sell? What are we going to be doing with that?
That detail really hasn't been determined yet, but I know that it's the preference for the city to maintain ownership, and I think that's the lens we're going to utilize as we release these different RFPs and really push for that type of structure. Things might vary dependent on what's being developed and negotiation details, but I think we will push to maintain city ownership.
This seems like an ideal property to, as we all discussed, we all like the idea of community land trust. It seems like a real organic opportunity for us to eliminate the cost of land and allow them to maintain. Like my community, there's a strong workforce home ownership ethos that runs through the ballpark neighborhood that we probably ought to protect. But I would, even beyond just either land trust models or low-cost leasing or those sorts of things, I would be interested in us looking at the asset management, like what's been done in Annapolis, Austin, Chattanooga, all these other places where you actually become part of a joint venture and leverage the revenue that comes off of that into community enhancement. It's a long-term play, but much like Ms. Carlson said, we've already made an economic promise to this neighborhood that was not able to be fulfilled, and leveraging our assets now could prevent that 25-year window from causing someone else to make the same comment.
Thank you, Councilmember Lopez Chavez. Board Member Lopez Chavez.
Thank you. I've got a few different comments and questions. My colleagues already echoed the understanding prioritization of housing attainability, specifically homeownership product. I would like to understand if we should outline a percentage and very strictly work within the RFP to require, in my perspective, in what I'm seeing, we don't have many condominium or homeownership products across the city. I'd love to see 60% or more, personally. I think it's necessary for long-term anchoring and stability of this neighborhood, as well as helping families. I wanted to better understand the parking ratio. I'm surprised as a city that has had multiple discussions related to parking. I understand we're balancing events and visitation versus the individuals that'll be living here, and I wanted to understand how you came up with that parking ratio.
Yes. So ultimately, we looked at this from a district perspective of, can we create a shared parking supply that would be unbundled, that could be used across different types of users and different types of day and different types of events, but not overpark. I think that ultimately was the last thing we wanted to do, was feel like we needed to overpark this district. We have two parking garages that would be shared across multiple land uses as part of this. There is some parking that is integrated into individual projects, residential projects, but from a commercial standpoint, civic, hospitality, it would all be shared across the district. Ultimately, we would like to explore other opportunities to help find supply outside of the site itself and looks for underutilized parking within the neighborhood to help ensure that when there isn't a big event or a big concert, that it doesn't get to a point where if somebody needs to drive, that they are able to drive, and that we're not providing any unnecessary impacts on the larger neighborhood.
Okay.
But ultimately, we want to say this is a transit-oriented development, and we want to really help support a mode shift, a mode split, where more people are choosing to live in the ballpark, take transit, walk, and bike. And hopefully this framework will help facilitate that.
I think when we consider the housing product, we need to consider the types of families that need access to a parking ratio so it doesn't further encumber those constraints or strains on the neighborhoods. So in terms of residential, whenever we decide that percentage, I want us to consider those parking ratios as well. Ballpark and Central 9th are already inundated with parking constraints. Most parts of the city are. And so I really want to consider the families that are having children and how they use vehicles to transfer to workplaces or places of childcare. I don't want to take up too much time, but I wanted to talk just briefly about the public utilities that'll take place in here and better understand. We obviously have fire code, but I'm thinking trash removal, snow removal, other types of blights that might occur, even the safety of parking. Has this been considered in the design long-term? How sustainable is this? You know, some of the design I genuinely see in our city already, maybe not to this extent. And I see difficulty for our public services department to overcome some of the services that are needed. And I'm just concerned that the current design is going to be difficult to maintain a level of service. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, I think it's always striking a balance, and ultimately this community plan needs to get to that next level of design and refinement to really look at the streetscapes and how they're designed. But there was a lot of intentionality in terms of functional internal streets. We identified what streets, the widths, were going to be appropriate for emergency vehicles, for fire, that they were going to be able to accommodate trash pickup and servicing and loading. We identified where on the edges of those buildings where parking entry is going to be required or service entries. And ultimately those streets were designed and calibrated to support everyday life, things you need for any type of building service. So ultimately there was thought and intentionality behind that. There will need to be more refinement as we get to the next level of this project.
Yeah, thanks. My final comment was just the square footage space is significant. And thinking about freight delivery, the different service providers that'll come in will inundate this neighborhood. So I think we should consider the different sites of transit when it comes to commercial delivery. I just currently looking at this, there's some traffic flow. I think there's possible cases or scenarios where there's traffic flow impediments specifically on that would be that north kind of mid-block area from the northern edge of the ballpark structure between the hotel and retail. I really think that's something to be considered. In hearing from freight delivery, Nicholas and Company, for example, they're super backed up and inundated, and they actually have extreme difficulty navigating these neighborhoods as is. So that's something that I just foresee in the future will be difficult with this design.
Okay, understood.
Thank you to staff. You know, really, I would just say with a lot of the projects we're seeing in downtown, we don't talk enough about how we overcome the burdens and the different strains neighborhoods take during construction. And I think something in the RFP we need to include is written language that in this procurement process, we require activation, sidewalk sheds, mobility and accessibility. This parcel does us no good if we shut it down for 4 years during the different phases. I didn't hear mention of that, so unless I'm mistaken, I really want to see a plan that overcomes those quality of life issues and symptoms. I think it's something that the neighborhood has echoed several times now that we missed. Yeah, Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Pui. Board Member Pui.
I give you a chance.
Yeah, every time.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for this design framework, and I think that I want to emphasize that this is a framework of a design, that this is not final design. This is trying to capture the many voices into something that creates synergy together, and I'm impressed with what we have, what you have put together, what the community came up with. Now, are we pleasing everyone with this design concept? And I will tell you that we won't. And not to say that there is very good feedback and that we should, think about many of those things said and see if there is something that we have missed. But you're going to be pulled in all the directions, and you are not in an easy spot right there. And I'm very excited to see this concluded, so we can actually end up moving to the next stages of actually doing something. And if not, we're going to over-design ourselves for years to come, and nothing is going to happen. And yet, I remember many members of the community raised the issue of activation as one of the main issues of this site when the bees were there. The lack of activation in 3/4 of the year that created all sorts of other problems. So if we don't activate this, if we don't have a plan, we're going to have the problems that many of us don't want to see in this neighborhood. But let me say this, remembering many, the feedback from the community, safety was one of those, very on top of the list. You are proposing something that brings activation all year round and eyes on the ground, people, families, a library, a new fire station, hotel, a venue, housing, all of it in a site that doesn't have any of most of these things. You are talking about, the community spoke loudly about open space and accessible parks. You are basically adding about almost 5 acres of open space and community space, which it's a huge win for a community that doesn't have it. You talk about a library. My God, this neighborhood needed a library. It needs a library for decades. It's been talked for decades about the lack of it. We have the possibility of building a quality library for a neighborhood here. We talk about festivals and bringing this space to life. This plan accomplishes that. Talk about local businesses, places where we can have local businesses. This plan accomplishes that. Paying respect to the history of the site. You're trying to bring that to life too, and this plan accomplishes that. You talk about pedestrian and inviting the people to this block, this massive block that is almost uncrossable. Now you're bringing that back, and one of the biggest issues for most of us is the issue of housing and trying to bring housing and focusing on housing. For ownership opportunities for our neighbors. Again, this is a long time on the making, and this council approved the ballpark station area plan several years ago that envisioned many of these things that we're seeing right now. Shouldn't be new for many of us, and I'm excited to see this design framework. And there's still some tinkering to do. There's obviously some RFPs, and the projects are going to come to us, and we're going to have to figure out where the money comes from. How do we make it happen? But the bones are correct. The bones are right. And I want to thank you for the challenge of boiling this down to something that gives us hope and makes us proud.
Thank you very much. I'll just take the last few comments here. I appreciate the presentation, but I also appreciate all the comments we had before the presentation. And I really want to make sure that we take those, I think there were 7 individuals made comments on the ballpark, take all their ideas and absorb them, because they kind of hit a lot of the points the council members made here. And I think that's also what the community is telling us. A couple things that mentioned here, and I'm just going to briefly, the open space. besides the safety side of the house, open space is so vital. That makes us want to go outside and not in our house. So if it's not green and if it's not inviting, if it's asphalt, no one wants to be there unless they're playing hoops. And that's it. So we want to have that open space. You know, the grass field has to be a grass field, not an AstroTurf field, right? AstroTurf is not green. It's just green asphalt. We have to look at the view. Again, the comment was made that we have a beautiful view, but when you look at your map, it's only like 45 degrees, and that we're missing that 20 degrees to the north where the parking lot is. And rightfully so, you don't want to look at a parking lot. Do you need 85 feet of parking lot? How many floors are we going down? Where else can we put that 20 feet or 30 feet so we're at the same level as, I think that's the fire station, is 45 feet. So something of that nature. So there actually is a view of the whole panoramic that you see now that we won't see then. So all these comments to housing, yes, there's a balance there, but those are my two things. And then this is deep into the weeds, but we got to figure out something about off-leash dogs. We can't have the park being off-leash dog park and then we kick the kids out to the street. I'm sorry. There's a lot of dog owners. They love green space, but if I had 5-year-olds, I'd want them on the green space first. Sorry, that's me. So appreciate that, but let's take all their comments and everything in here, absorb it, and realize that we don't have the answers. The answers usually come from them if we listen to the residents. So thank you very much, everybody. We're way behind time, but we needed to have this conversation, and we need everybody here to also have that conversation. So we're going to move on to the next. Number 2, Sunrise. Thank you very much. Resolution of the Sunrise Metro Permanent Supportive Housing Loan Amendment. Tracy and Marcus Lee.
All right, good afternoon. I'll try and be quick. We have some slides we'd like to share real quick. So as mentioned, we are here to talk about the Sunrise Metro Loan Amendment.
Sorry, Mr. Chair.
Good, Board Member Mono.
Yeah, I was advised by the Attorney's Office just to disclose that I am on the board of the Housing Authority, who this loan amendment is for, and that I should be recused from this conversation. So I'm going to leave the meeting.
Okay, thank you. We'll call you back.
All right, next slide, please. All right, so real briefly, Sunrise Metro is a 100-unit permanent supportive housing project operated by a housing assistance management enterprise located at approximately 580 South, 500 West. These units are targeted at those earning 35% AMI or less. And Sunrise Metro is one of the few projects within the Salt Lake Valley that serves this 35% AMI and less population. The project currently has a 20-year cash flow loan with the CRA that matures in May 2026. With the CRA in a first position lien, and we are entitled to 36% of any surplus cash flow. As a note, if a project does not have any cash flow, the CRA does not collect payment in that year. To date, no payments have been received from Sunrise Metro. So today, the borrower is requesting forgiveness of the accrued interest upon repayment of the full principal amount of the loan, which is $700,000, when financing for the redevelopment of the site concludes. For background, in 2004, the CRA Board approved the original $700,000 loan with a 3% interest rate, with a 2-year term intended as a construction loan for the original Sunrise Metro construction project. And this loan had an original maturity date of April 2007. In December 2005, HAME requested a 20-year extension to to that cash flow loan, still with the 3% rate, which the CRA board granted, and that loan is due to mature in 2026, and that's what we're discussing here today. Next slide, please. So currently, Sunrise Metro is seeking to redevelop the site in 2 phases. Phase 1 includes a remodel of the existing 100 units and adding 18 additional units to the existing structure. And phase 2 is the construction of 100 new units in a 6-story structure. This project will continue to serve the 35% AMI and below population, and anticipates accepting HUD vouchers and VA vouchers for veterans. Phase 1 is anticipated to break ground in August 2025. Improvements include enhanced case management spaces and a future pharmacy and on-site clinic that are being planned as well. Next slide, please. Here we have some site drawings. Outlines in blue represent the new portions that will be constructed, and outlines in red are the existing structure. Next slide, please. And here we just have some elevations, the north and east elevations, as well as a bird's eye view of the overall site. Some parking is included, and additional tree and canopy coverage is anticipated as well. Next slide, please. So throughout our conversations with HAME, the request has pivoted from a 40-year cash flow loan extension at the same 3% to a new request, which is the interest forgiveness. Originally, the lenders would allow HAME to close their loan restructuring with letters of intent with the CRA and Salt Lake County, even though those documents have not been executed, but the lenders have changed their position, which has introduced a level of timeline risk that would put the August 2025 closing in jeopardy. As a note, HAME is also requesting interest forgiveness from the county as well to assist in this project refinancing. As of today, July 8th, the accrued interest is $315,503.81, and they are requesting that this amount be forgiven upon repayment of the principal amount of $700,000. HAME is able to repay these loans through updating their fair market rent values and including vouchers in their project pro formas. The interest forgiveness does have a large impact on the project financing. The effect it has upon the debt service coverage ratio supports HAME in repaying this loan without putting their overall project financials in jeopardy. HAME is also providing a $9 million soft loan to the project, and they are working with the Richmond Group to close on their LIHTC credits. HAME is making efforts to reduce their debt burden and has secured a 0% rate on a small amount of debt they owe to the Olene Walker Housing Loan Fund. So right now, the CRA is recommending that the interest forgiveness be granted for a few reasons. As previously mentioned, our forgiveness does have impact on the ability to move forward with the project and prevent delays to the August closing. And more importantly, the CRA would be able to recoup our initial principal payment and include it in current programs for housing projects, whether that be the NOFA or the home ownership programs. We'd be able to include those funds in the next cycle, since repayment could be completed relatively quickly. And then forgiveness would also assist in the construction of deeply needed affordable units that serve vulnerable populations. As mentioned before, there are not many projects that provide these services to this AMI level and below. So here we just have a small chart outlining the financial implications. We're just requesting forgiveness of the $315,000. Next slide, please. And that concludes the presentation. If there's any questions, there are members of the development team on Zoom if there are any technical questions or such.
Thank you, Marcus. Councilor Board Member Petro.
I'm fully in support of this. This is what we should do. But what does it do to our budgeting? Have we already budgeted for that amount? Do we have to go back and adjust it? Or is it just a wash for us?
Are you talking about their full loan amount right now?
Yeah, have we already budgeted to receive that 1 million and change, and we have to go and do some sort of adjustment somewhere, or is it a theoretical million at this point for us?
I think it would be technically theoretical at this point. So what would happen is once they repay it, I think we would do a budget amendment once we have those funds in our...
Just to reflect that we wrote it off. Okay.
Yep, and it'll go back to the board for your review and approval.
Thank you. Any other questions? Councilor Bowie?
Quickly, I agree that, we visited this building, Councilmember Petro. I heard you sing, and you are incredibly talented. And this, the work that these organizations provide to our community is just, unpayable. So, and they are expanding. So I agree with the recommendation.
Thank you. Councilmember Young, did you have a comment? No, okay.
I do not. Thank you, though.
Okay. A question I have is, so the requesting the forgiveness of the accrued interest upon repayment of the full principal when financing for the redevelopment site begins. And that's like within, was that later this calendar year? I can't remember. Is that what you said, right?
Yeah, they're anticipating to start this new project in August. So if that closing goes well, they anticipate closing or repaying our full loan amount.
So we get our full loan at 700,000 instead of getting the 700,000 or the million over 40 years, right?
Potentially, yeah.
Okay, exactly. That's what I thought. So we'd get it this August, this summer, later this summer, instead of over 40 years, and that's probably just if you invest it over 40 years, you can gain more than $300,000. So.
Correct. Basically, we'll exit the loan and recoup our principal in one lump sum.
Okay, appreciate that. So the action we have today is a motion. So,
Mr. Chair,
is there no other questions?
I would like to make a motion that this board adopt a resolution to approve an amend to the 2006 Sunrise Metro acquisition loan to forgive accrued interest to facilitate the preservation and redevelopment of permanent supported housing.
Second.
I have a motion from Board Member Pui, a second from Board Member Petro. Any discussion on this item? Oh, you made. Oh, the second was on Board Member Wharton.
No problem.
Any discussion on this item? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Hearing none, that motion passes unanimously with Councilmember 6 with Councilmember Mono accused. All right, thank you very much. Accused, recused. Yeah, just, hey, I had a speech impediment there. All right, moving on to straw poll funding for the 9-line. Straw poll funding for the 9-line property acquisition. We have Lauren back up on the table.
Yes, I'll try to make this speedy. So this is a straw poll request to allocate funding for property acquisition in the 9-line project area. The CRA board, you all actually reviewed this straw poll request at last month's meeting. However, there was an accounting error and we did not poll the correct amount of funds. And so this item is being brought back to ask for the correct amount of funds, which is approximately $603,000, again, for property acquisition in the 9-line project area.
Any questions or Board Member Pui?
Mr. Chair, I would like to propose a straw poll to use $603,444 from the 9-line Fund Strategic Intervention Program for property acquisition in the 9-line community reinvestment area.
All right. Show your favor. That has got a 7-0.
Thank
All right,
you.
thank you, Lauren. Reports from the Executive Director. Nothing? Chair and Vice Chair? Board Member Mono? Anything? I have nothing at this time. Danny? Director Waltz? And hold on one second. So at this time, we have no written briefings, we have no consent. We're at this point, we're going to be entering the closed session for a strategy session to discuss the purchase, exchange, and lease of real property and attorney-client matters. I would look for a motion, and we were going to go into closed session here, then we'll go into a closed session for advice and advice and counsel for the council also.
Mr. Chair, I move that we go into closed session for the purpose of discussing acquisition or disposition of property and for the purpose of receiving advice of counsel, and that when we come out of closed session, that we will be in our work session for our city council work session.
Second.
I have a motion from Councilmember Wharton, a second from Board Member Lopez Chavez. I will roll call this. Board Member Young?
Aye.
Mono?
Yes.
Bowie?
Yes.
Lopez Chavez? Wharton?
Yes.
Petro?
Yes.
And I'm a yes. That passes 7-0. We are now in closed session. Thank you very much, everybody.